Right now it is time to bring in the frickin' frack of Nick and Nack, Tim, Luke, and Greg Strom, the appraisal guys. You'll find them on the web, tqag.com, Treasure Quest Appraisal Group. And let's see if we have the battling duo with us this morning. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Well, good morning.
There they are, both of them.
in
the same location.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. See, every once in a while, the world can slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, with this new thing that I've been watching in the news, with this new thing with the AI problems that they're having for all the politicians, we need our own AI. That's what we need for when we travel, so that way we could be we would have our own artificial intelligence doing the interviews when we're on the road.
Oh gosh! Well, you guys.
You were out last week, Greg. So we had some special guest stars.
I could have used some artificial intelligence last week.
Yes, but we did have a good time last week, and the class ended up just wonderful. We went on a couple of tours, and one place that I had never been, which was the Island Mold Glass Company. They make glass molds, and that's all they do. They're not a glass company. They don't do anything. That's just Island Mold Company, and they make the molds for Steuben and for some of the golf trophies. There all these different companies, and they had all the examples all over. It was really cool. So that all ended up, that was all great. That was the Wheeling trek. And then here we're back home, and in the news yesterday, which was a little bit of a shock, is that Sotheby's was sold.
No, I said, Jill said that to me, and I said, why would somebody buy Sotheby's?
Well, he's a art collector as well as a businessman, and he's a media and telecom tycoon is what they called him, or mogul. French, but also has dabblings here in the U.S. with a company called Bidfair USA, I think, and that's the company that. So Sotheby's just becomes another company in his roster, I guess, of companies.
Does it take any of the luster of the name Sotheby's away?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think that it's going to make it now a private company as opposed to a publicly traded. Christie's has always been a privately held company, also by the fashion mogul who owns Louis Vuitton and all of the some other fashion things. And he's a Frenchman. I think the gentleman who bought Sotheby's is also a Frenchman. And they both are avid art collectors. So they do understand, or at least we'll see, they understand what the markets are and how unpredictable art is. But Sotheby's was sold for $3.7 billion. So that's hefty.
That brings me back to the late 60s when Henry Ford wanted to get into racing, okay? And he wanted to buy Ferrari, the company.
Mm-hmm.
And Ferrari would not sell him the company because he didn't want Ferrari to be tarnished by the Ford name. So Henry Ford invested, I think back then, $3 to $5 million to build prototype race cars and to beat Ferrari on his own game. And 3 years after he was turned down to buy Ferrari, Ford came in 1, 2, and 3 in the Le Mans race, and crushed Ferrari. So that's the first thing that came to my mind was, here was Ferrari. He stood up and said, you know what, I want to keep my company independent, and Ferrari, I don't want any major corporations taken over. That's why that came to my mind. But having a company nowadays, I think, is a little different than back in the 60s. It's much more complicated now, and if you can make billions of dollars, why not get out?
Well, I remember when Christie's was sold.
Mhm.
He and this French guy, everybody,
Francois,
well, not
yeah.
everybody, but a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, this isn't that going to diminish the brand?" And it hasn't diminished the brand at all, because if you ask the average Joe on the street who does, who is interested in an auction, they probably wouldn't even know who owns the company. So
Right.
it hasn't really diminished. I don't think it will really diminish the brand of Sotheby's, because they've been around for so many, hundreds of years, that, when you mention the word auction, the first two words that come out of people's mouths are Christie's and Sotheby's. So I don't
Well,
really think it's going to diminish the brand at all.
right. And also, like, just as far as their press release, I did, I'm sure they sent it out to all the people who are registered on Sotheby's site. I did get an email yesterday from the CEO just of Sotheby's, just saying that it's this purchase is in line with their strategic. I'm sure it's all press, but buried in that press release was that these initiatives that they are moving toward, that Sotheby's wants to do, is that the new owner of the company is standing behind that, and is going to help them achieve their goals, which, that's great. And that's the important part. And, what good, bad, or indifferent, when you have a board of directors that in a public company, that's one thing. Now you are answering to a whole nother board of directors and individuals. So it's just a matter of mindset and making sure that they're all on the same page. And, we'll see what happens, but I'm sure that it will be seamless, that we will see as the public. It'll be interesting to speak with some of my friends that do work for Sotheby's now, and just see what the internal is all about. But the outward, I don't think that we're going to know. There won't be any notice of any difference.
Well, it would be interesting to hear from somebody who read the press release that actually is going to be impacted by this, which would be the employees,
right?
To hear what their take would be on the press release and the underlying read between the lines sort of.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. Time will tell, because at first they don't want to ruffle feathers, and once that all goes down, then we'll see what happens. But also, Sotheby's had announced that they are selling I think it's 1965 Aston Martin, and it was used in Goldfinger and also for promotions in Thunderball. And what they were saying is that when the car, this Aston Martin, appeared in Goldfinger, the sales of Aston Martins just skyrocketed,
Went through the
and
roof.
they
Yep.
had to increase the number of cars. But the estimate is $4 million to $6 million, and that's going to be sold in August, actually over Greg's birthday. It's August 15th through the 17th in Monterey. So
You don't
that'll
have
be
to
part
put a
of
bow on
Monterey.
it, Tim. You can just
Yeah.
deliver it. Okay?
I bet you it will get between $7 and $9 million.
I think with the Bond background, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Whenever any James Bond items come up, I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt that.
I
It'll
don't
be
have any
interesting.
inside information. Let me just give you that disclaimer. But my guess is going to be closer to 13 million.
Yeah, it's going to
Really?
be. It'll be skyrocket high. Absolutely.
It'll be
Absolutely.
interesting. So we'll report back when that sells.
Now, Greg,
It was the first one. It was the first
it was the
model.
first iconic. It was the first car that really made itself iconic in a movie. I mean, if you remember, there was a movie called Gone in 60 Seconds, where there was a Ford Mustang. I forget what they named the Ford Mustang. Well, that car, there's been so many knockoff reproductions of it. It's amazing, but there is no knockoff reproduction of the original Aston Martin for James Bond. So
Right.
it's gonna bring significant dollars. And Greg, I had to laugh when you said about when you hit the first thing you think of when you hear the word auction is Christie's. There's a whole bunch of us out there. The first thing we hear when we hear the word auction is a foreclosure.
That's true.
Well, I guess perspective would be the key word here.
That's right. Which side of the fence?
Right.
Which side of the
Well,
fence you're on?
What exposure
You have
had
a
to
perfect
that auction.
segue here between the James Bond car and what sold this past weekend in California. This was the weekend of the Burt Reynolds sale at Julian's, and it really, we looked through the catalog. There was there was everything but literally but the kitchen sink that was up for auction. And this was what was so fun about this sale is you could spend as little as $192 and get a piece of Burt Reynolds, or you can spend as much as $317,500 and get his personally owned Trans Am.
And
So-
speaking of cars, that was
That was
the
it,
car
yeah.
that was used in Smokey and the Bandit.
The
But this
Bandit,
was
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah. So
that's actually a pretty good price for that car.
Yeah.
and it was competitive. It sold within the mean of the estimate, which was 300 to 500,000, and it sold for 317.5. Now, the one thing I'm not sure of if Tim, do you know if that included the buyer's premium or
Yes,
was that
it
the
does.
actual handle?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the buyer's premium.
They would have gotten much more if
Included.
it would have included Sally Field's wedding dress. No,
That's
really. Can you
right.
imagine having the Trans
Well,
Am
yeah.
and the wedding dress at the same? And now that would go. What a display for car shows.
Exactly, and that's probably who ended up buying it. But yeah, they probably would have paid more. You're right.
Well, Burt Reynolds signed script for Smokey and the Bandit. It was estimated at 2,000 to 4,000, and it sold for 37.5. So the Smokey and the Bandit stuff really, I think, outperformed it. Way outperformed it. It was really good. So
37,500.
yeah, 37,500.
I got it. You said 37.5, so I was like, oh, 37.50.
That's right.
Wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
That's a bargain.
Just,
Yeah.
just clarification.
Well, you know what? That's like when I go to somebody's house and I'm doing a walkthrough, and they say, "Well, how much do you think this is worth?" And I say, "Oh, somewhere between 40 to 60." And they go, $46,000.
No.
Right.
All they hear are they just put the numbers together. That's
right.
that's what happens.
All right.
But
Also, one last thing is that just over the weekend, a Babe Ruth jersey broke a record at auction,
Saw
Hunt
that.
auction, for $5.64 million. Which the reason part of that is condition, but it also came from the Babe Ruth family. It was passed down in the Babe Ruth family. So the provenance, amazing. So interesting things have been selling.
All right. Well, guys, we'll speak to you again next week.
Yes, you
Hey.
will.
have a great week.
Have
Take
a
care,
great
guys.
week, Marshall.
Bye-bye.
Take care, buddy.
Tim Luke, Greg Schramm, the appraisal guys, the frickin' frack of Nick and Knack, TQAG.com on the web.